Welcome to radicalwellnesstv.com. This is Laura Lee, and I'm here with Linda and Jane, and we're here to talk about Diablo Canyon and where it stands, and San Luis Obispo, Mothers for Peace. And this is part 2. Linda, take it away.
Well, we were talking about the normal operation of a nuclear power plant and the misconceptions that people have about it. There's a lot of talk these days how nuclear is such a great power source because it's carbon free and it doesn't add to CO2 in the atmosphere, et cetera, et cetera. Well, that's partially true. Once the power plant is built, it's the highest emitter of CO2 of non-fossil fuel sources. However, the thing that they don't talk about is the incredibly toxic waste that's produced at a nuclear power plant. Ionizing radiation, there are many different kinds of ionizing radiation that are caused by a nuclear reaction that goes on inside. What they do actually is cause a nuclear reaction to go on inside of the containment, the reactor vessel. And with the heat that's generated from a nuclear reaction, they run water. Actually, they run 2.5 billion gallons of water every 24 hours that they suck out of the Pacific Ocean and run it through the plant. And what they do is this cold water goes through pipes, and then the heat from the nuclear reaction heats the water, turns it to steam. The steam drives the turbines inside of the power plant, and that creates the energy, the electricity. It's a very clunky, old-fashioned way of making energy. It's and in the process of doing it, there are right now 6.5 million pounds of highly radioactive nuclear waste sitting out there at Diablo Canyon with nowhere for it to go. Because there's no safe repository for it in the entire world, actually, but in the United States, there's nowhere for it to go. Some of the elements, like plutonium, the half-life of plutonium is 24,000 years. What that means is that half of the radiation is gone in 24,000 years. It takes about 250,000 years for plutonium to become inert. That's only one of the radioactive elements that's being produced out there. There are probably over 100 different elements. Some of them are very short-lived, some of them are medium, others are, plutonium is the one that's, well, actually, uranium is the naturally occurring element, has a half-life of billions of years, but that's another story. Anyway, so during the operation, the normal operation of the power plant, they produce gases that have radioactive elements in them, and they produce water. There are tiny bits of radiation because radiation is very tiny. It's not something you can like put in a jar and screw the top on and it'll stay there. It'll seep out. And lots of radiation is called gamma radiation, which means that it goes at the speed of light and it goes through anything that it touches. It's not stopped by physical barriers. And so they accumulate big, huge vats of water that are tainted with radiation, and then they're allowed to dump it into the ocean. And then every day when that 2.5 billion gallons of ocean water goes through, it's tainted slightly with radiation, and then it's dumped back out into the ocean, and it's around 18 degrees warmer when it goes out than it was when it came in. In the meantime, it has killed every single organism that has been sucked up into the plant. And every year they say that around 1.5 billion mostly larval fish, and of course lots of plankton, and the substance that gives life to our oceans is sucked up in there and dumped out with bits of radiation and absolutely free of life every day for the past 32 years?
33 years.
Something, yeah. The bioaccumulation is incomprehensible about how much life has been lost. Plus, our current runs, from north to south, and so there's a constant flow of radiation going down our coastline. And we have kids out surfing every day there. I mean, and the thing about radiation is that if you ingest it, if you swallow it, if you inhale it, it stays in your body. It is not excreted, and it accumulates. And so we don't know the health effects because, well, there has been a study of the health effects of this nuclear power plant. On the latest study is on fetal and infant mortality, and are around in the zip codes closest to Diablo Canyon, the spontaneous abortion rate or the miscarriage rate is it how much higher? Four times?
I don't remember, but
significantly higher. And as is the rate of thyroid cancer, leukemia, childhood leukemia, and one other cancer, but I can't remember which one it is. So, I mean, it's extremely troubling, and yet we humans have the capacity to put the blinders on, or to not believe it or not pay attention to it. It's stunning to us as Mothers for Peace how people can do this, but they can and they do every day.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that. The proponents of nuclear power and the people who work at Diablo Canyon and are upset that the corporation has chosen to shut it down for economic reasons, they write numerous letters to the editor claiming that nuclear is a clean source of energy that will not impact climate change, and therefore we should keep it running. Well, that's not a very good trade-off, because radioactive elements that can't be contained, that are going to be lethal for 1 million years. You can take that number from the Environmental Protection Agency, 1 million years. That's not a very good trade-off. And we don't, in our choice is not nuclear or fossil fuels, because in the 21st century we have all those wonderful alternatives. And the alternatives are not just wind and solar. The criticism there is you can't count on them every day, true. But they are already making a huge difference. And we also have conservation. We have energy efficiency, meaning, your refrigerator you bought last year uses 20% of the energy of the one that you got rid of that was 15 years old, So with all these different elements, we don't need the energy from Diablo Canyon, and it's not economically profitable to PG&E anymore, which is why they have chosen to shut it down. I should add to that there are many days, I don't know how many days. Anyway, it does happen at times that on a sunny day, we have so much solar energy in the state of California. The state of California sometimes has to pay the neighbors, Nevada and Arizona, to take some of our energy, because if you overload the Western grid, too much voltage on your wires, you're going to blow the system up. So they have to make the phone calls and say, unplug your solar plant. We've got too much energy on the grid. And call Nevada, okay, we'll pay you this much per kilowatt hour if you'll buy this much, so to save our grid. So Diablo Canyon is an obstacle. And if you don't want to believe Mothers for Peace saying that, go to Pacific Gas and Electric Company's website, and they'll tell you, read the joint proposal. If a person does a search for a joint proposal Pacific Gas and Electric Company. You could read the whole thing and they tell you right there that the energy is no longer needed, so they have chosen to shut it down.
And the thing about the energy from Diablo Canyon is, like Jane said, they can call the solar plant and say, shut that solar plant down. You cannot do that with a nuclear power plant. It's very dangerous to shut it down. So if we have too much energy in the grid, they take everything else offline before they take Diablo Canyon offline, because it produces 2,200 megawatts of energy 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, pushing into the grid. And so what that's doing is suppressing and inhibiting the growth of solar, wind, geothermal, all the different kinds of renewable resources that we have in this state. So it's very important when it. Oh, and by the way, we usually have around 40% extra power on our grid every day of the year. So the shutdown of Diablo Canyon, even if it's shut down today, would not harm our supply. We would have plenty of electricity.
So you're on a committee called the Decommission Engagement Panel.
That's right.
So what is that all about?
Well, when the Diablo Canyon is scheduled to shut down Unit 1 in 2024 and Unit 2 in 2025. And then, once it's shut down, once they turn the power off, they have to decommission it. What that means is that they have to tear every bit of it out of there. There are two huge domes, I'm sure you've seen photos of them, that are contaminated radioactively. There are two reactor vessels. There's tons of equipment and cement and piping and all kinds of stuff that's contaminated, whether or not it's high level or low level. It's contaminated with radiation. And they have to figure out a way to take that all apart, take the low level waste somewhere, and then the high level waste, which is they now have part of the high level waste in the spent fuel pools. Okay, so I'll tell you a little bit about the spent fuel pools. When Jane, why don't you talk about this? You do that, and then I'll do the rest.
So the most dangerous component of an operating nuclear power plant is the spent fuel pools. They are the most vulnerable to sabotage or accident. And that's what made the mess at Fukushima, was the spent fuel pools. The reactors themselves are encased in, I think it's 9 feet thick concrete domes. So if there's a mishap there, it's not nice. But containment domes mean they'll keep the radiation inside. Hopefully. No guarantee, but that's the idea. And definitely it would help. But the spent fuel pools, when they take the rods, the fuel rods, when they're no longer useful to have in the reactors, they remove them and put them in the spent fuel pools. Now, that word spent is very deceptive, because spent fuel, it means it's not useful for them, they can't control it, but it's millions of times more radioactive than that same fuel when it went into the reactor. They have to remove it because it's too hot, and I mean hot thermally and hot radioactively. So they put this stuff in these pools, which are filled with water that also has boron in it, to stop the fission. So this is like absolutely crucial. So if you were a terrorist, that would be the vulnerable part of the plant to attack, because it has something like, it's either 4 or 6 inches thick steel flat roof over the spent fuel pools. Now, a shoulder-fired missile could penetrate that and blow some of that water out of that pool. And these rods, they're in racks, so they're vertical. If you uncover the top 18 inches of those rods, which are 25 feet
under,
Yeah. How long are the rods?
About 14.